When you see vagueness, push and push and push until you get some clarity.
And it doesn't mean it can be a subtle pushing too.
It can be, I don't care how subtle it is. And at the same time, I would say from somebody who's learning how to have agency, why does it have to be subtle?
No, totally.
If I say I find your answer very vague, and if I don't get some clarity and transparency and clearness and details, I'm going to find that you're an untrustworthy person, not worth my time or relationship. Maybe that's what we have to go to.
Hi, welcome to Prey vs. Predator, the podcast. We are so thrilled for you to join us today. We are a coercive control education and recovery podcast where we train our listeners as well as ourselves how to spot the predators in our lives and to empower the prey to be powerful and resilient and active in our own lives and to spot the predators out there. But I want to introduce myself, and I think we should introduce ourselves to our listeners as well. I am Amber. I am a coach as well as a teacher and a performer, and I was raised by a predator, so I feel like I have some experience. But there you go. Who else?
Well, I'm Jill, and I do lots of things. It's hard for me to describe what I do. I'm a musician, and I work in a hospital, and I'm a researcher and a storyteller. I was in a relationship with a predator for many years, and I learned so many things. Yeah, I do this because I have a heart for people, and I don't want people to go through what I went through. PJ, tell us about you.
Hi, I'm PJ, and I am a family therapist and also a survivor of coercive control. And just like you guys said as well, I don't want anybody to either go through this if we can help it, or I want people not to feel alone. And I also want to empower people to have a language for what this is and why you're not crazy. Because once I discovered a language around what was happening for me, it just opened my entire world. And so that really is, I think, why we're here today to discuss with Prey.
Yeah, and I want to encourage our listeners to please like our podcast. The more you like it, the more you follow us, the more you give us a thumbs up on any social media device, the more we can do.
Absolutely.
Because this takes time and energy and money. So the more support, even if it's just a thumbs up, that's the support we need. So if you appreciate what we have to say, I'd recommend that you help us out that way.
Yeah, and send it to people that you think can use it. And as our message grows, we strengthen the prey of the world, and we send up more understanding and hopefully protect people who are either in it, getting out of it, or not to get in it at all.
I've had some feedback that people don't like to refer to themselves as prey. They think that it's weak in some way, but prey are strong. Like when we were first starting this podcast, the three of us had many conversations about looking for an image of what prey is. And I said, I think prey is a blade of grass, because a blade of grass gets stepped on every day and yet still gets up again and
thrives.
Yeah, absolutely thrives and grows. But anyway, we're so excited that you're here. And PJ, you have something unbelievably interesting to talk about today.
Thank you.
No pressure there.
No pressure there. Thank you, Jill. So I was reading this book, and it's called The Science of Trust by John Gottman. And it is a very thick book. And 95% of the book was sort of surprising to me, because I always thought of John Gottman, who is an expert on marriage and relationships, and he's sort of world famous for his ability to predict which couples will stay together and which couples will divorce based on like 10 minutes in his lab. And he's got something like 93% accuracy or something. So he's this tremendous, I always thought of him as this tremendous therapist, but after reading The Science of Trust, I realized he's not actually a therapist as much as he's a scientist, which makes sense that he has what's called the Love Lab in Seattle. And this book really is a testament to his scientific background, because it is study after study after study about trust. And at the very end, he sort of boils all of these like hundreds and hundreds of studies that he refers to into 5 principles of whether or not to stay in a relationship. And as I was reading through, especially his summary of the research and data, he's very clear that according to his research and data, trust is really the hallmark of a safe relationship. And so if you have trust, he really wants to advise to continue it's a relationship worth working on. And if you don't have trust, it's a relationship very seriously consider getting out of, because it's not good and it's going to implode. And as I was reading through, just thinking about the predatory relationships, and I thought it would be so interesting for us to kind of go through his 5 points. At least that's how I've boiled it down into his 5 principles. And John, if that's not right, I apologize now. But
come on our podcast and correct
please.
it.
Yeah,
We'll welcome you anytime.
So I thought if we could look at his 5 principles of trust, because one of the things I notice about predatory relationships is prey come into relationships with all kinds of goodness. And we've talked so many times about the goodness and the sort of honesty and in some levels, innocence of prey, imagining that anybody that they're interacting with is good. And they say they're good, so they must be good. And they act good, they love bomb, and so it feels good. So there's no red flags. One of the things that I thought to look at is, trust takes time. And a lot of times we know about predators don't like time. Predators want to come in, they want to love bomb you fairly quickly, and they want to move fairly quickly into a relationship. And they just want that trust to be given to them.
I think being quick keeps you off your feet too a little bit.
Sure.
Swept off your feet. Essentially you're unsteady. You're not able to recalibrate and check in.
And once somebody comes along and offers you a story, you have no reason to not trust that story unless there's a long period of time or unless you ask more in-depth questions. But regardless of whether you ask questions or whether or not there's time, you have to know what are the signs of a lack of trustworthiness in a person. So I thought that if you wanted to today, we might just talk about what are the 5 principles of trust and how do they relate to your experience of living with and interacting with predators.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Go
Okay.
for it.
Okay. So the first one that we want to look at is honesty. So John Gottman says, as far as you are aware, this person practices no deception and does not lie to you. So the first thing that struck me in this is no deception.
There's no gaslighting either.
Right, right. But, oftentimes we don't even know that we're being gaslit. But I just thought that no deception. Now, again, at the beginning of a relationship, the person can be lying their face off to you. You would have no idea at the beginning unless you were to ask questions, like really probing questions. And sometimes when you ask those probing questions, you get sort of a pushback from the predator. So you'll ask a question. There's somebody will say something like, I was really hurt in my past multiple times and maybe in the same way. And you might say something like, it sounds like there's a pattern. And the predator may respond something like, well, that's victim blaming. That sounds like you're blaming me for being hurt. So there's a pushback for you asking questions. But what strikes you when you think about, as far as you are aware, the person practices no deception and does not lie to you? How, in your experience with predators, does that hit?
Well, that hits me as very 100%. In the sense of if they lie to you, that means that they could be on that spectrum of being a predator. And there's no sort of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Which is surprising because everybody, if you're a young person and you're in a relationship, well, he said he went home, but he went out with his boys and, they had a fun night. That's not a big deal. But that's a lie.
Yeah.
And that should tell you something. And I've noticed even watching other podcasts or true crime podcasts, there's often a sense, a little niggly sense inside them, ooh, I didn't feel right when I met them, but then I let that kind of go. Or I didn't feel right when they told me this, but it turns out he wasn't on the phone with his mom. He was on the phone with nobody. He
Mhm.
wanted to, fool me. So it's just very interesting. Like there's no wiggle room. There's no wiggle room. Is it a lie or is it true?
Yes, which is so brilliant, right? If they're lying, then this is not a trustworthy person. Jill, what comes to your mind?
I'm thinking hard about my experience, and my predator would do something deceptive and then immediately love bomb me.
Yeah. So what does that do? So you know that there's deception.
Right. But then it's almost like the individual would not even apologize for the deception, but just like heap on the love.
Interesting.
Yeah, just heap on the love.
So instead of how did that? So let's say you had this in front of you. Let's say you posted this list on your fridge.
Yeah.
And you knew that you'd been lied to.
Yeah.
But you were also being love bombed. How might that impact you for missing this key component of trust?
So I think for me, and the place that I was in, like the concept of trust, I didn't trust or distrust my predator. The word trust was completely absent from our relationship because I was so, I lived in fear 100% of the time. And I almost look at the concept of trust as being a gift because I didn't have the wherewithal to even consider, do I trust or do I distrust? Because it was, the concept was completely absent from my relationship.
What was overriding that, do you think?
Fear of I had such a fear that my predator would leave. I had such a fear that of the shame that I would heap upon my family, a shame that I had made a horrible mistake. So I lived in constant fear. I lived in so much fear of shame that the concept of, do I trust this person, didn't even play a part, didn't even play a role in my relationship.
So it sounds like you're saying because if you had had this list, it might have stopped you in your tracks a little bit to even see yourself as an agent of whether or not you did trust or not trust. But it sounds like for you, you weren't even seeing yourself as somebody who was even able to ask this question.
That's right. I wasn't even there.
It wasn't because you were so frightened of losing the person that you weren't sitting in some kind of judgment seat. You weren't sitting in a power seat. You weren't sitting in a seat where you could have agency or could have self-efficacy. You were sitting in a seat where this person had all the power.
That's right. And interesting that you would use the word agency because in a lot of the research that I've done so far in this new year, that has been the word that has come up again and again and again for me is agency.
How do you define agency?
Oh, that's a very good question. Now, is this a question for another podcast? Or
for our listeners, for anybody who goes, I don't get what that means.
For me, and I'm going to say for my dad, I'll just talk about my dad. He would just let people do things to him. And in my relationship with my predator, I just let my predator do things to me. And it never even occurred to me that I could push back or raise my voice. It just, what people did to you is the way it was.
Interesting. So lacking agency, lacking a voice for yourself.
Yeah, zero voice.
Lacking seeing yourself as an agent of change.
Right.
I'm looking it up in Wikipedia. It says
Wikipedia doesn't lie.
It's the capacity of individuals to have the power and resources to fulfill their potential.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting because it's almost like, you hand your agency over to another person. Mm-hmm. And yet there's another, and I can't honestly remember what book or podcast I heard it from, but it was saying the two fundamental elements of happiness or of joy in life are agency and gratitude. So without those two things, that real happiness, real joy is stunted.
It's interesting
I need
because,
to write that down. It's good.
yeah, like I'm even thinking of agency, and I feel like growing up in somewhat of a religious environment doesn't really teach you a sense of agency, because what it does teach you is that there's external factors, an external God, there's an external whatever. They will predetermine where your life will go. So for you to have this idea that you are responsible, you're not raised with that belief. You're raised with, if things go wrong, you're responsible. But if things don't go right, you're not responsible. So it's very interesting, because I think I've struggled with that sense of agency. Like in some ways, I have a really strong sense of agency. And in other ways, I think I was raised to believe, well, wait and see, or God will bless, or if you pray enough. And this idea of never really having the idea of what is trustworthy. Culturally, you get married. What do you mean I have to sit there and figure out whether or not he's being trustworthy?
Things just happen to you.
Yeah, you just, it happens to you because you're kind of in this. And if things aren't good in this life, you have the next one. You have eternal life. So it's really interesting, because you even said hope is agency and gratefulness. And I think of gratefulness or gratitude as not just going, okay, I really am grateful for water. I like the sunshine, like just making a list. It's allowing those things that I'm grateful for, thankful for, actually being in them and enjoying them and taking pleasure in them. That is my gratitude practice. So rather than me going, I'm thankful for the sunshine, I go out and let the sunshine land on my face. And I feel it.
So you're an active participant.
Yes. But that's like only recently where I realized that. Because I used to hate, like, people go, I have a gratitude thing. And I'd be like,
that too.
it would just bug me. It would be like, well, gratitude practice, it makes you happier. So, and then I realized, I'm like, oh, what is gratitude for me? It's actually experiencing it. But we digress. But
As we usually do.
As we usually do. And it's still among theme.
Okay, so people listening, write down the word agency, because it's important, and maybe we'll talk about it at a later date.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea for another discussion. But I think for us right now, I think what the point I'm hearing for all of us that's really powerful is sometimes with predatory systems or with predators, because prey are very sort of self-sacrificial, generally speaking, sometimes we're not even in a position where we are able to see ourselves as sort of being able to make decisions based on somebody else's behavior. And at the same time, I would say, like in my case, when I think about my relationship with a predator, I believed really deeply that my predator was very honest. Like, so I would have said, check that box. It was many, many years into a relationship that I discovered that there were lapses in honesty. But I never classified them as lapses in honesty. I sort of made excuses for them, and again, didn't have that sense of agency of like, well, wait a second, I'm dealing with deception here. So I was doing the things that I said I was doing. And then when I found out that that the person I was in a relationship wasn't, it was really hard and painful.
You probably didn't get a straight answer.
No, I got sort of the answer of like, well, yeah, okay, I did that, but that's a normal thing to do. Like, that's a normal thing to
overreacting.
You're the one who's not normal. You're the one who doesn't self-care, or it was framed as like a self-care thing, right? But let's move on, because I think it's important.
That touches on number 3, I think.
But I think that's really where I think the point that I want to really focus on is that a lot of times as prey, we're not even thinking about ourselves as having the agency to determine or actually classify these things. And so that's where, I want everybody to make a list. We'll review the list in brief at the end. But I want you to make a list, post it on your bulletin board or your fridge somewhere, and really start filtering every relationship you have through these 5 principles and ask yourself, am I in a relationship with somebody I can trust? Or better yet, that is a trustworthy person. So let's go to number 2. Who wants to do number 2?
So I'll read it. Transparency. This person keeps no secrets from you. When you request information from this person, he or she or they are totally forthcoming. So they are just an open book to you.
So what's the difference between transparency and honesty?
I see transparency as an open book, or like a window that you can see through. It's not opaque. It's not clouded over. It's like I feel like I'm pretty transparent with my friends. So like if people I don't trust ask me like, what was your childhood like? Or, you sound like you come from a great home. I might go, yeah, I had some whatever. But if I'm with my friends and they're like, hey, like what's going on? I can go, something's triggering me, or, like I'm transparent. What's going on? You can see. I'm like an open window.
That's, I like that.
That to me is what it is. So I don't really have little hidden parts.
We don't need Wikipedia now.
Yeah. Well, that's how I see it. I don't know, because it's like no secrets. But I think, because we can't be transparent with everybody. Right? It's only those we can be the most intimate with that we can be transparent, because you can't walk out in the world as an open glass window of here's my insides, here's my pain, my vulnerability. But I think it's with those we love and those we feel safe with.
Yeah, that's true. Like, so if you think to somebody like you meet somebody that your partner knows and they haven't told you that they slept with that person or something, then they may not be being dishonest not to say anything. But certainly it's a lack of transparency.
It's not transparent. Whereas if they were transparent, they'd be like, hey, we were intimate, just so you know, like that was a long time ago. I'm just giving you a heads up, like, or.
Yeah, I like that. You can see through the window very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not trying to, hide bits.
Okay, so number 3 is probably the one that he puts the most, at least my interpretation of Dr. Gottman's work, is for him. It seemed like number 3 was almost like an all or nothing. Like either this person passes number 3 or you need to get out of the relationship. And it hit so many red flags for me in terms of my relationship, how I have experienced predatory behavior. So I really want us to get to that one. But number 3 is accountability. So John Gottman talks about accountability as this person does what he or she says and promises, and you can get details from the person about it. And this one he is really sharp on. If the person remains vague or unreachable about accountability, he or she or they are not to be trusted. They are not to be trusted. And this is the kind of like, if you get vagueness, get out.
Well, every sort of podcast about true crime, I would say, is like when the person is, in an intimate relationship and they're being victimized, it's like the partner who's the predator is very vague about where they've been.
Right.
So it's like, I see how that would be very true. I don't know how you guys see it in your relationships. For me, this doesn't really apply, but I don't know. Can you guys speak to this?
Well, I think for me, it is so important that our actions and what comes out of our mouth align. There are these principles that are floating around Instagram right now, and I can't remember what it's called, but I know that the first one is be impeccable with your word. And so like make sure that if you say you're going to do something, you do it. And to me, that is the hallmark of accountability.
Well, I have a story about accountability, that the vagueness part is such a profound moment for me. And if I'd had this list on my fridge, maybe I would have put it in this category and known to leave. And so what had happened is I was with somebody and they had told me they were going to a friend's house overnight. And so I said, okay, sounds good. But then I found out through, because I was having a little bit of distrust, I kind of did a little bit of sleuthing and found out that that this person I was seeing had actually stayed in a hotel that night, not with their friend. So I thought that was really interesting. And when the person came back, they didn't know I knew that they had stayed in a hotel. So I had asked a series of questions. And the questions were like, so how was, let's say the friend's name was Susie. Okay. Like, oh, how was Susie's house? Oh, it was good. And Susie happened to have quite a few children. Oh, okay, that sounds good. Well, how did you sleep? Where did you sleep? And the answer was like, oh, they had a number of spaces. Like they had a number of spaces to choose from. But you see how vague that is?
Yeah, nobody talks like that.
Nobody talks like that.
They'd be like, oh, I slept on the child's bunk,
Yeah, in so-and-so's room or whatever, right? Or on the couch. And I was like, oh, okay, they had a number of spaces. How did you sleep with all the children in the house? And they said, oh, some of the kids were gone because their partner had taken some of the kids. You see, they never actually answered my question.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed through doing that the person, that was my first real indication, to be really frank, like my first real indication of the depth of slipperiness of this person. But I think I had, even when I had found out that there had been deception or found out that these things were happening, I still didn't categorize it as, yes, it was deception, but I didn't categorize it as something worth leaving for or something serious, something significant. I had in my head, well, everybody tells lies and everybody says fibs and everybody, like, and none of them are really serious lies. Like they're more just covering up maybe, and then making excuses for the person. So there wasn't this sense of like lack of accountability and vagueness equals get out.
Yeah, because someone could hear this and go, well, I'm with somebody and they're really vague sometimes. They'll go out for the afternoon. They don't really tell me where they're going. Turns out that they, go to a coffee shop by themselves. But I would argue that because they're being vague, there's a reason behind it and you shouldn't trust it. And I think it's really interesting that you said, you can talk yourself out of it because it's not a big deal. Like when I hear this, it sounds like a teenager. You have a teenager who's like going out with their friends. Maybe they're smoking and they don't really want to tell you. So, we just went to Bob's house and we, hung out. But this is supposed to be your partner. You're not dealing with a teenager. You're dealing with somebody who is your most intimate partner and they should share those things with you.
I remember one time my predator and we were downtown and for whatever reason we had two different vehicles and it was time to go home. And so my predator said to me, yeah, I'm just going to take my time coming home today. So whereas I got in my vehicle and I drove home, my predator told me, yeah, I'm just going to take my time.
Mm-hmm. Totally
home.
Vague.
Totally vague.
Yeah. And did you know what they got up to?
No.
You just have no idea.
No, and then you say to yourself, like, I don't know what you said to yourself, but you might say to yourself, like, oh, I'm overreacting. Mm-hmm. I'm being suspicious. There's 1,001 things you can kind of shut yourself down on.
Yeah, for me, it was just fear, and I just cried all the time. I just cried.
So because you knew.
Yeah,
you knew. On some level, your body knew.
And I think what I want to make really clear, when we're talking about this, like, lack of accountability and vagueness is not to be trusted, this isn't just a guy who is theorizing that this is going to mean the relationship isn't good or safe. This is a like an absolute world-class, probably the best in the world scientist around relationships saying, if you have vagueness, basically this relationship is doomed to implode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And be very unhealthy and not okay for you. So it's not just like he's got a theory. It's like we've got, like, in that book, I don't know how many pages it is, but it's a very thick, scientific, incredible research in this book that he has boiled down to these principles. So this not just like, you should just think about leaving the relationship for something that's, we can talk ourselves out of. It's like, no, vagueness, and this is for him. This is one of the hallmarks that he pins. Vagueness, think about getting out. Let's move on to number 4.
Okay, so Gottman's 4th principle is ethics. The person has good ethical standards that you agree with, and you are confident you have witnessed to this person having consistent standards of just and fair conduct with others. Like my predator is a professional and seemingly has excellent ethics.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that people can hide behind ethics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, and doesn't mean a predator can't have probably one of these things on their side. They could be, well, I guess if you're a predator, you wouldn't be all that ethical if you're abusing your partner behind closed doors and then
But I think
good at
you
work.
can be schooled in a very high degree of ethics and use that actually as a weapon.
Mhm.
Like, look at me. Look how ethical I am. Look how educated I am.
Oh, absolutely.
And your predator can still treat you like shit and claim to have a very high ethical standards.
I also think this world is full of people who are unethical. Like, you know what I mean? Like ethics, I don't know if they're that important to a lot of people nowadays. I would argue that almost like, how do you get your way to the top? And look at the presidential race, some of the whole politics in the US. It's people who are unethical.
But I think you're spot on. I just think that part of the problem is sometimes because we don't hold ethics really high, or we don't think about them as ethics, we allow predators in who have incredibly poor ethics and don't call them on the carpet. Like, I think of the former president of the United States. There's a lot of Christian evangelicals who support somebody like Trump. And his ethics, I mean, he raped a woman. I
don't know if he allegedly. I have no idea.
Did she not win her?
I'm just saying allegedly.
I'm going to say more than one.
Did she not win her case?
Oh yeah, he did. You're right. I was thinking of the porn star. Well, sorry, there's so many.
Well, let's talk about so we have at least one sexual assault. Yeah. His ex-wife, his first wife, has said he raped her.
Really?
Ivanka, Ivana.
Yeah.
She recanted that later, but she said it, and she wasn't a woman who had reason to say it otherwise, I would imagine. Before you get letters, I don't know. But then we have him on tape mocking or
sexual assault.
Talking about sexually assaulting women and laughing about it. We have him on tape mocking people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. We have him now recently having been not accused, but actually found guilty of defrauding banks and the people of New York.
Loans.
We have evidence that he tried to overturn an election.
Yeah.
And tried to, like, the depth and breadth of lack of ethics is stunning. But
that person can still become the president of the United States.
But that speaks to what Amber was saying. Like, in my mind, we jump over that, like, as if ethics don't matter. But yet what Gottman is saying is that ethics matter, whether you see them as mattering or not, whether you acknowledge them as mattering or not. Lack of ethics equals lack of trustworthiness. Mm. And lack of trustworthiness means get out of the relationship. It's not safe. This person is not safe for you. Whether or not you can excuse any of the behaviors, statistically and scientifically, this person isn't safe. They're not safe. They're not trustworthy. And trustworthiness is the foundation of a good relationship.
Well, just fair conduct with others, like just treating other people fairly. Like, there's so much to be said about that. Like, it's just, like, I think one of the number one things we should teach our children is to be kind. And not using ethics is not being kind. Being ethical is being kind. Treating people as you would like to be treated.
People don't know what ethics even is.
No, and I think it's not important. Like, the world says it's not important, but it's very important.
And I think about all the things that we've done at PVP here, where we've talked about predatory systems, where the head of the predatory system, like, think of the Gothard movement with the shiny happy people. The guy at the top is grooming young girls to do inappropriate things for him and with him. And this is not ethical.
No.
And yet you have a team of people, or even the Duggards who are behind the scenes, are doing incredibly unethical things with their children.
Or they allow their son to do unethical things to their...
But them allowing that
Yeah.
and not
Turn a
having
blind eye.
turning a
Yes.
blind eye
Yeah.
is not good ethics.
No.
But we make an excuse for it,
Yeah.
which I think prey often will do to like Jill, to your point, to keep the relationship.
Yeah, that's right.
And how many times do we prioritize keeping the relationship to looking at what is actually going to be healthy for us? So there is this really huge part of this, I think, which is like, yeah, ethics may not mean to us a lot in some situations, or we may be able to brush them over or look at what's good about the person besides their lack of morals. They're like the Bruxy Caveys of the world, like, well, or the Mark Driscoll, so like, yeah, you left a wake of people who just were decimated at your church, your Mars Hill people, but you just picked up, left town, plopped yourself into a new situation, and hey, you're a talented, gifted speaker.
Yeah.
What you say
And you treat people horribly.
It sounds fantastic, and it's wonderful, and it sounds good, and boy, do you draw people in. So we're going to pretend like your lack of ethics doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But Gottman's saying, based on the research, this is not going to go well for anybody who is connected with him.
And coming back to the last one, accountability, somebody who doesn't have an ethical standard, so someone like Driscoll, he won't take accountability.
Right.
So if you say you are losing out on ethics, you can preach really good, you can come up with these really interesting sermons, but you treat people horribly, and he admits it. Like, you're in my way, I will drive over you, and I will back up and drive over you again. He literally said that. So he doesn't have ethics, and at the same time, that makes him very inaccountable. Like he will not take accountability for his behavior.
We need to do a series on ethics for normal people.
Yeah, I know.
Ethics but so I think that this is a brilliant thing to think through. And again, post this on your bathroom mirror, post it on your fridge, because this is going to enlighten you for who to have in your life and who not to have in your life. But let's go to the last
Number
one.
5. Can I read it?
Yeah.
Alliance. This one really speaks to me. Alliance. This person is totally on your side. There is evidence that this person does not operate out of self-interest or form coalitions against you, but has your true interest at heart. That one speaks to me because I have felt, even as a child in a predatory family situation, that often others were more valuable than I was.
Oh, for sure.
And what others would say about you is more valuable than somebody going, no, I trust you. I trust you. It was always, and I could be the butt of a joke, and that's not alliance. If you mock me or laugh at me.
Like your predator would make you the butt of a joke.
Yes, I was the butt of a joke by my predator. And that isn't alliance. You're not taking me into account. I'm the butt of the joke for other people to make fun of.
Throwing you under the bus.
Yes. I will put you down so I can step on you to get where I need to go. Anybody?
Or to look good.
Or to look good, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of things are coming up for me. The first phrase, this person is totally on your side. What a gift would it be if we had partners and we could say, my partner is totally on my side. Like, wow. And then the last bit, has your true interest at heart. My predator would often say to me, you don't have my best interest at heart. And so I can see that phrase as being weaponized. Yeah.
How they accused you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of something that they did.
Yeah.
Which is probably something that happens a fair bit in these situations, right? And I can even think of in dating relationships where maybe I was getting too much attention for doing something well, and they had to be like, well, you weren't that good, or you weren't. And it's like, oh, they weren't on my team.
Absolutely. I think of I think of this alliance as when I was in a relationship with a predator, as the relationship was starting to get a little bit more difficult, the predator kind of went ahead of me. And at the time, I didn't really realize it, but had really started to denigrate me behind the scenes to people. And I didn't know it at the time, but basically was throwing me under the bus and making up lies and stories so that people would assume really negative things about me. So they would do it in this very sneaky way, like say, oh, I had a really hard weekend. I'm just so tired of all the yelling. Or I'm just
to other people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So or I'm just so tired of the drama. What drama?
So the
I don't want to.
indication is that the person that they're with is so dramatic.
Right. Or just, like, I just can't be screamed at one more time.
So you don't know what's behind closed doors, this person.
Yeah. Wow. And then somebody would be like, you get screamed at? And so it might be something like, well, maybe I deserve it. Maybe I failed to get the dishes done on Tuesday. Like maybe that deserves some screaming. But it was just, I was up all night with, with being sick
and none
or
of it was
something.
true.
None of it's true. So it's interesting though, because this kind of alliance, you sometimes don't know when your person is aligned with you. Like, Amber, you were saying with a predator, when you're raised by a predator, that person may be going behind your back and saying how hard it is to deal with you, or
scapegoating. I was thinking about the scapegoated child, right?
Yeah.
So this would be an example of the and I've heard horror stories, like even on TikTok, where it's like a sibling of like a family of 5, and they're the one scapegoated child that nobody talks to with kindness, and they all kind of align together against this person.
Yeah.
Which is horrific. Like my experience hasn't been that, thank goodness, but this would be a perfect example of that. And if you're in that unhealthy alliance against somebody, there needs to be something said about that, You're aligned against somebody, that doesn't bode well.
Well, and I think that this is where we've talked about post-separation abuse. And I think we should do something about flying monkeys, because there's this phrase in the course of control community where we talk about flying monkeys, and they are where when the predator kind of needs people on their side, they pull in innocent people, right, and they get them to support them. So like me and all my friends, me and my family, me and my friends, me and the psychologist, me and the doctor.
They're minions.
Yeah, we think you're really sick, or we agree, or we all think, and they tell these stories and they create this alliance on the side against you. And so we call those people flying monkeys, because those people will do the bidding of the predator on the predator's behalf, and they'll give you dirty looks and they'll reject you.
I think we need to save this information for the
absolutely. But the flying monkeys would be a great example of alliance. So this could be also in a situation where, say, you have the person is aligned with somebody else. So it could be like a husband's aligned with his mom and dad, or a wife is aligned with her parents, or her best friend or his best friend, or where they become the most important thing, not you, in sort of that type of relationship. So let's recap.
It's good.
Yes.
Now we know we got to make a list. So let's recap the
Science of Trust by John Gottman. So what are they? Number 1,
honesty.
Number 2,
transparency.
Number 3,
accountability.
Number 4,
ethics.
And number 5,
alliance.
All right, write down your list.
And we have a special bonus word, agency. Special bonus word.
Yeah, use your agency to look over this list every single day and bump up every relationship in your life against this list. Are the people in your life people you can trust? If they're not, let's think about getting out of the relationship, full stop. Because according to John Gottman, if those things aren't true about the relationship, your relationship is going to go downhill. It's going to implode. It's going to be not good for you.
And for those listeners who feel like they don't even know what trusting is, I think the first step for that would be learning how to trust yourself.
Oh, that's good.
What does that look like? It doesn't mean everything you do is great either. It's just meaning, being able to tap into what's going on and maybe listening to your own gut, your own voice in this relationship.
And can I just add can I throw in one little area of this as well, which is when it comes to trust and trustworthiness and trusting yourself, we talked about a lot of times the predator wants to get in and get this relationship going before their lack of trustworthiness becomes apparent. So I want to just also say, take your time and ask questions that will expose some of the lack of trustworthiness in the person. So if you're seeing vagueness, vagueness is probably one of the easiest things to spot.
Yeah.
I just think of something like the bad vegan or something, When you see vagueness, push. Push and push and push until you get some clarity.
And it doesn't mean it can be a subtle pushing too.
It can be, I don't care how subtle it is.
Yeah, it could just be like, okay, I'm going to make note. I'm going to make note of that.
And at the same time, I would say from somebody who's learning how to have agency, why does it have to be subtle?
No, totally.
If I say I find your answer very vague, and if I don't get some clarity and transparency and clearness and details, I'm going to find that you're an untrustworthy person, not worth my time or relationship. Maybe that's what we have to go to. So I say ask the questions, push, and don't allow vagueness. If that is the hallmark, step into it. Use your agency. Explore the relationship. And when you see if it's not trustworthy, get an exit system.
And check in with yourself too.
Yeah.
And trust that
Good.
as well.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.